Yesterday we covered the basics on prompt engineering, right? What is about, like, what is the prompt engineering, what is a prompt, what are the building blocks of a prompt, and we touched briefly about one of the parameter that captures like how the model will behave, like that is the temperature, like if the model should give the creative responses or give the specific responses. So we covered that section. Today we'll deep dive into the prompt engineering series. uh, so we'll deep dive into the techniques. One of the technique which is like zero shot, one shot, or few shot prompt engineering techniques. It is the most common, most basic technique which anyone can use to get the better output from the AI. And before jumping into that technique, I will first show, like as promised, uh, the s- code for each of the video that we'll jump, each of the topic that we'll cover. Will be sharing the code as well. So I have added a link to, I will also add the link to the GitHub repository, but I can walk you. So this is the GitHub repository, like and I'll be sharing the link for this. And it covers details about the last video about basics of prompt engineering and for the beginners as well. And it also, I've also added to this a quiz, like before jumping into the, like when you cover a video and then try to answer a quiz, and this quiz is also included into the YouTube video. And here I've also included an answer for each of the question. Basically, the first question in the pizza story: why was give me some food a bad order, right? So similar to that, I have added few questions to cover that topic, and then try to answer them yourself. I have added the answers in the Git repo with explanation, so you can click here and get the answer. Today, like I will not spend much time on the theory of this beginner friendly lesson that we did, but I'm going to show you a trick where you can, using that, you can simply convert this Git repo into an ID. You don't need a local ID. Simply go to your page. For the simplicity, I'll just duplicate this tab, and then you go to the URL and go to the start, and then change this com to dev. Once you do that, you enter IDE opens similar to a VS Code. It's taking some time to load. I don't know why. Yeah, as you can see, it took some time, but uh, the browser window transitioned into the ID. So whole GitHub repo is converted into an ID, and then here you can make your own changes, and you can also run your code directly on browser. You don't need to have a local ID place. So it's taking some time, but once it's loaded, I'll again show you guys. But this is one way you can run your code. Now, as I promised, I'll jump directly into the practical implementation of the beginner video that we covered. So for that, I'm going to use the PyCharm, and I've created a Python file for the same, and where we'll cover that the first prompt that we have written, and then if we have also covered this vague versus clear prompts, and then what are the four building blocks, and then the temperature effect. So I'll be covering all those concepts. So this is a simple setup, and I have added the required comments for someone who directly jumps into code to know like what we have covered in the video. So as you can see, I have added comments for the prompt, what is prompt engineering, the anatomy, and the key model settings you should know, like what is the temperature, which captures the randomness, like 0 is like focus, and 1 is like highest, which is creative, and then the max tokens. So it is like the maximum length of the answer, and each AI model supports different length, different value for the max tokens. And in today's world, like the with a highly advanced model, this max tokens has increased a lot. And then there's also a terminology for input tokens that covers your context, like how much context you can pass to a model. So the models today also support like 500k plus tokens as well. So it all depends on the costing and everything and what is your need. But for day-to-day users, basic users, you don't need such a high context. And then the another, this is the top p parameter. This is another way to control the randomness. So in for this demo, we'll be leaving this as blank now. So as I have mentioned here, rule of thumb, like facts, code, classification, temperature should be set to low, because we don't want randomness, we want specific results. And when we are doing the brainstorming stories or ideas, the temperature can be set to high, then so that model can think out of the box and give us the creative responses. Now when you are trying to run it for the first time, and if you're not familiar with the Python or something, then you have to go to prompt engineering directly, use a Python command to run this introduction.py, and the code is runnable. And for this project I'm using 3.12 version of Python. You can have your own version of Python and should be able to run it. You can download Python from the official website and set it up, or maybe you can also use the conda installation uh, to set up Python. I'll make a separate video for that if required. If you mention in the comments you need a video for that, I'll make that. Now here, as you see my first line here, I'm importing the LLM client. So LLM client is a class that I've created to call the large language model endpoints. Basically, here in this video, we are using demo responses. I'll be showing all the outputs with the demo responses. But if you want to see how the real model responds, then you have to put that variable, put the API key value in the environment file. So in the environment file, you have to mention your API key here, and then you will get the responses from the model. But for the demo purpose, I have not added the API key here. And so all the responses will be the dummy responses or the demo responses that you will get. So as you can see, I have added these four methods here, and which is like demo first prompt. So we'll, and which is like simply I've created a object of the LLM client, and then I'm asking a question, explain what an API is in one simple sentence, and then I'm printing an answer. Similar to that, I've covered like demo vague versus clear. Here, the objective of this matter is the single most important lesson: vague in, vague out. Basically, it's similar to garbage in, garbage out. The more specific or the clear the prompt will be, the better the response will be. And here, as you see, for while creating the LLM client or LLM object, I'm setting the temperature to 0. So this is a parameter that we can override. And why I'm doing this, because I want a focused and a focused answer and a deterministic output. I don't want my responses to change and again and again. So, and as you see, I have named the variables as such, like it's very clear to understand. When you see vague, this is like vague prompt is like write about dogs, and a much better or a clearer prompt will be write a 3 sentence friendly paragraph about my why golden retrievers make great family pets. And then I've also added more context, use simple words a 10-year-old understands. Now the output will be this. I'm printing the vague prompt, and then I'm printing the output from the model. Then I'm printing the clear prompt and then giving the this. So now, before jumping into the building blocks, let's go ahead and try to run this class, right? So in this, I'll be first running the first prompt method. So I've commented the other methods here in the main, and as you see, I have created this LLM client object, and then if it is demo, it will run into demo mode. So by default, if you don't put the API key, it will go to the demo mode. So now I'm going to run this, and then when I run this, as you see, my code ran successfully, and it also logs like running in demo mode. Why? Because the no open API key found, and you will see the simulated answers, right? If you want to see the real responses, you have to add the API key into the code in the .env file. Now, our first prompt, as it's demo mode, is we are seeing a sample reply. You ask explain what an API is in one simple sentence. Then set your begin .env file to see a real model response. So I have also added a basic takeaways, right? A prompt is equal to the input you give to AI model. Clear specific prompts beat vague ones every time. Great prompts often have role plus instruction plus context plus format. Temperature controls creativity. Low equal to factual, high equal to creative. Everything else in the course builds on these basics. So now if I run the other method that we have for demo versus vague, so I'm going to rerun this class, and on rerunning, as you see, we got a response like fake prompt, write about dogs, right? So, and then the clear prompt is like write a 3 sentence. So this covers like the basics, and when you give API key, you will see difference in the results, right? So this is a great starting point for anyone to test this uh, prompt engineering, uh, test this code, and to be able to understand the concept why a better prompt is required. Why, when you give a detailed instructions with a context, beats every time a vague prompt. And then similar to that, I'll comment this out, and now we'll jump again to our building blocks, right? So if I go to this function here, what are the four major building blocks for a prompt, right? It's like combining the role, the instruction, context, and output format in one prompt. So here we are giving the role, you are experienced travel agent. I'm giving the instruction as suggest a short weekend trip, and then I'm giving the context. The traveler loves hiking and photography and has a $400 budget. And the output format, what I am telling the model to give is reply with exactly 3 bullet points, each under 20 words. So this is the additional context I'm giving the model, that I want a response in this format. You can get the response in JSON format, so you can write, okay, give me a JSON response or a CSV response, or so on. Like whatever you want, you can give the model. So there's a typo, I'll fix that. Now the once you call this ask method with the prompt, and as you see here, I'm calling the LLM client and then passing this temperature as zero point 0.7, so that model can be creative and look for different trips and then give me the better output. And then here, as you see, this dot, this is kind of chaining, function chaining. So these Python topics I'll cover separately, but here I have just simply uh, calling the ask method on the client and then giving the prompts to get the response. Now, if I run this method as I have already made the required changes, I will see a different response. As you can see, we got the better response. Like whatever we are sending to the model, we'll get the response. Similar to that, I will leave it to you guys to run this temperature thing. Right now, as you have seen, like every time we are calling this LLM client. So for the setup and ease of use, I have created a LLM client and I have added that to the repository git repo. If you in the commons directory, if you go to the common, you go here, you will see LLM client, and I will cover this LLM client creation separately. But if you want to run any of the class, you can do this. Use this basic LLM client that I've created simply for anyone with the beginner knowledge and the experience. People who can use this and try this out. Now, as you can also run these on the browser, and I'm repeating again, or you can run this locally on your any of the IDE. Right now, jumping back again to show you how this LLM client look like. So I'll go to the implementation. Okay, so this is the LLM client class, and here, as you see, I've added the detailed documentation on this. So this is different, but I'll go to the LLM client here. So this is simply a wrapper around an LLM, and like you can so that we can simply connect to the LLM or talk to the LLM using this object itself. And I've made this very simple and lightweight, so you can use these two methods like ask or chat. So ask is for sending one prompt and getting one string back, and then chat is for sending a full conversion and get one string back. So I like there is a different SDK, but I have made this very simple. And then as you see, there are two different modes. Like real mode is when you add an API key. Demo mode is when no key is found. It defaults to the demo mode, right? And you can simply set this with is demo LLM.isDemo if it's set to true or false. By default, I've set it to true. And the first thing is like whenever you have an environment, you can simply load that environment using .env. .env is a Python library that helps you to load these .env files, and the all the keys are made available to the execution, Python execution. And by default, I'm choosing this GPT-4 mini model, but you can have any model of whatever you want. So you can set that model here, and if you don't pass this thing, the LLM defaults to this model. Now here is the class, and this is very important. Like I'm creating a LLM client, and what are the parameters it expects, right? As you have seen, I have passed this temperature multiple times in the code. I've shown right here we are passing this temperature. So but in general, you can pass the model and which model to call, like, but it is defaulting to this. But if you change it, it will call a different model. And then temperature, it is a float value. It expects a value between 0 to 1. And then system, so it is a system prompt applied to every ask call. So there are different prompts, system prompts and the user prompts. So every AI model has its you can modify the system prompt and pass a different system prompt, but it's an optional parameter. And then so this demo responses is a list, like it is only used in the demo mode or demo responses demo mode, not in the actual running. So as you see here, we have an init method where these values are passed. Like by default, if you see, I'm setting a temperature value to zero point 0.7, which is in creative mode. And then as you see, I'm setting these values of the model, like whatever you pass, we'll set the model or it will choose the default model. And then the temperature, system, demo responses, and OpenAI client. Now these are some of the helper methods that I've created. Basically, it will use OpenAI if the key exists. Otherwise, it will use the offline simulator. Now, this property is used to control the demo responses or the AI responses. So you can use this method to set it. So right now, I have set it to mock. Now, this ask method is basically to which we'll call to get the responses, send a prompt and get a response to that prompt. So when you are calling this ask method, you can pass three parameters like prompt, system prompt, and the temperature. So this messages whatever the model returns, we'll return that messages here. And then we have a different method chat, which which also accept two parameters like messages and then the temperature. Now you can set whatever the value of temperature it is. By default it's not set. And then as you see, like when you are doing a chat, you can do the OpenAI implementation. I've added a sample method here to get direct responses from OpenAI client, where you can use OpenAI client.chat completions create and then pass these required parameters, and then the model will return the response. Now I have also added a mock method for this demo, and we are using a fake model and for this demo purpose, as I have not added any API key. And then this banner is just for printing, for the getting the better responses, nothing else. It's just I have added this equal to and multi times 70, so we get a better response, like a kind of a line. As you see here, this is a kind of banner I'm trying to create via banner function. And then, like once you call this LLM client, you can simply run this and create a client. As I have not set this right now, so it will also print the demo, right? So if you see, by default demo mode is true, and if you want to run with a real model, you can change this value, or even if you simply provide an API key, it will override that and run into real model mode. So this is what covers the introduction about prompt engineering for beginners. And also I've covered the LLM client, which is a helper utility that anyone can use and do their LLM calls and see the responses. Now, in the next video, I will be covering the basic prompt engineering techniques, and I'll start with zero shot, one shot, and few shot prompting. Stay tuned and stay healthy. Thank you.